Look at this man, a pathetic, disoriented inmate, prisoner number 85. He stands in a freezing Alcatraz isolation cell, unable to remember what day it is. He weeps in the dark, terrified of his own shadow. His hands tremble. His eyes are vacant. It is almost impossible to believe that this rotting, hollow shell was once Al Capone, the emperor of the underworld, the monster who flooded the streets of Chicago with lead, who bought the entire police force wholesale, who raked in $100 million a year, feeding the darkest corners of human nature, the man who made governors nervous and judges sweat. But to understand how a mob god ends up crawling at the bottom of the food chain, you have to go back to where he first tasted blood. New York, 1917. The filthy, piss-soaked, cheap liquor-drenched streets of Brooklyn. There are no laws here. Only hunger, ambition, and straight razors buried deep in coat pockets. Meet 18-year-old Alphonse Capone, a bouncer at a second-rate dive bar. Clean face, arrogant stare, a chip on his shoulder the size of Manhattan. He makes one fatal mistake, one careless, insulting joke about another man's sister. A flash of a rusty blade from the dark. 3 deep, jagged gashes ripped across his left cheek. Capone hated the nickname Scarface until his dying day. He powdered his face obsessively. He begged photographers to shoot only his right side. He never spoke about that night. But that mutilated, predatory snarl became his most powerful weapon. A warning carved permanently into his skin, visible to every man who ever sat across from 1920 him at a table. He steps off a train in Chicago. Prohibition has begun. A gold rush. But only for killers. The city already has a king, though. Big Jim Colosimo, rich, fat, comfortable, and far too soft for the brutal new age arriving like a freight train. Capone solves the problem the only way he knows how. Simple, ruthless. He uses someone else's hands. One shot. In the back of a quiet, dark restaurant. No blood on Capone's expensive silk suit. The old era dies on a marble floor. The city gets a new emperor. By 1929, Al Capone is the absolute monarch of Chicago. He owns judges. He owns prosecutors. He owns aldermen, sheriffs, and the mayor himself. He cruises through his city in a 7-ton armored Cadillac, fitted with inch-thick bulletproof glass. The law, as far as Capone is concerned, exists purely as a tool, and only for poor people. But even the most profitable empire has overhead. The North Side gang has the audacity to challenge him directly. They hijack his liquor trucks. They gun down his men in broad daylight. They make him look vulnerable. In a city where perception is everything, Capone doesn't merely retaliate. He composes a message. And he delivers it with the precision and the drama of a man who understands that power isn't just about force, it's about theater. February 14th, Valentine's Day, 1929. Bone-chilling cold has settled over Chicago like a burial shroud. 7 rivals are lured into an unremarkable, freezing brick garage on North Clark Street. Told there's cheap whiskey to be had, a perfect lie for greedy men. A black Cadillac pulls smoothly to the curb. 2 men climb out, wearing heavy blue Chicago police overcoats. The victims inside don't panic. They've seen this before. They think it's a routine raid. The fix is in. It always is. They willingly surrender their weapons. They turn to face the grimy brick wall. They raise their hands and wait. They expect a pat-down, a little theater, maybe a small bribe. The fake cops throw open their heavy overcoats. Beneath them, Thompson submachine guns, the infamous Chicago typewriters. 90 rounds in under 10 seconds. A deafening, continuous roar inside a concrete box. 7 men collapse like cut rope. The brick walls soaked so deeply in blood that the metallic stench lingered in that garage for years, long after the bodies were gone, long after the press had moved on. And where was Al Capone? Sitting in a wicker chair in Palm Island, Florida, 1,000 miles away from the slaughter, sipping espresso, flicking ash from an expensive Cuban cigar, smiling warmly for the press. He had the perfect alibi. With this single bloody act of theater, he announced to the entire nation, "I can erase you from the earth, and the law cannot lay a single finger on me." The massacre was his greatest triumph, and it was the moment he signed his own death warrant. The American public recoiled in horror. The federal government finally understood a simple truth. You cannot take down this particular devil with bullets. Every cop he couldn't buy, he could outrun. Every witness disappeared. Every case collapsed. So they changed the weapon entirely. Capone's empire wasn't destroyed by agents with shotguns. It was dismantled by tired, unremarkable men in wire-rimmed glasses, sitting in fluorescent-lit offices, IRS accountants, pencils, ledgers, receipts. They couldn't prove the murders. There were too many layers between Capone and the bodies. But they proved he had never once paid $1 of income tax on an empire worth millions. 11 years. That was the sentence. That was all it took to break the emperor's spine. They shipped him to Alcatraz, a fortress built specifically to crush men who thought they were beyond crushing. But Al Capone arrived there, already a dead man. He just didn't know it yet. The real executioner had been hiding inside him for years. Syphilis, contracted in those filthy Brooklyn brothels, had silently progressed into its final neurosyphilitic stage. The bacteria began to devour his central nervous system with cold, methodical patience. The man whose mere glance had turned prosecutors grey, that man was now assigned to mop floors. His hands shook. The ghosts of the murdered arrived nightly on the cold concrete walls of his cell. The Emperor of Chicago descended, slowly and completely, into howling, irreversible madness. They released him early, not out of mercy, because he was no longer a threat to anyone. The system spat out a hollow, rotting shell. 1947, Florida. The former lord of the underworld sits drooling in a wheelchair by a vast, empty swimming pool. He does not remember his own name. He weeps, without reason. He sits for hours in the baking sun, reaching his trembling hands into the hot air, trying, over and over, to catch invisible fish that only he can see. Alphonse Capone wanted to go down in history as an untouchable god. He left it as a helpless, broken old man, imprisoned forever inside the ruin of his own shattered mind. All that remains of him is a simple grey granite slab pressed into the cold dirt of Illinois. No power, no empire, no fear, only silence and slow, absolute decay.